Hello and welcome to Green Dot Daily, live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe. It really helps. I'm Charlie DeSturco, and we're going to talk about the show in just a second, but a quick update on the Celtics front. Kristaps Porzingis has reportedly suffered a, quote, rare injury unrelated to his previous calf strain. The injury, as Shams Charania reported, has put Porzingis day-to-day for Game 3, though the Celtics forward did say he's optimistic in playing in that game. But let's move on with the show. We're just 2 days away from the U.S. Open, so Spencer Aguiar hops on to talk Scottie Scheffler's dominance and if he's worth backing at a 3-1 number. Jim Turvey gets us ready for Game 3 between Boston and Dallas tomorrow night, and Colby Cohen will talk Stanley Cup Final Game 3. Can Connor McDavid and the Oilers will themselves back in this series? We'll talk about that. But first, let's take a stroll down memory lane. Just a couple days ago, 4 days ago, Sean Kerner joined me to dish out some of his favorite props for Friday night.
Love the upside here. I was projecting her closer to 9.5, so I think we're getting a full board of value here. I think she's only going to get better, and she's already shooting a ton of shots. So love the over 12.5 for her at minus 130. I've been saying for a while now he's due for a ton of strikeouts. I'm still showing value here on the under. And plus, we're getting plus money, which makes this even better. So there's not really much to like here. So I'm projecting him closer to minus 160 to stay under 4.5 strikeouts here. 12.5. Love the upside here.
And so here he is, Sean Kerner, here to talk down some MLB props. Sean, I honestly am expecting you to go undefeated again because I'm a good luck charm in that sense. You look at this MLB top market right now, the strikeout market. You specialize on that about 2 days a week when you come on here. Paul Skeens is the headliner at 5-1. Zach Wheeler 6-1. You look at the rest of the top five: Max Fried, Brian Wu, Yusei Kikuchi. Any of these numbers at the top of the list stick out to you in particular?
So I have two plays from today's market. And the first, you already mentioned him. He's one of the favorites. It's Zach Wheeler at plus 600. He's going up against the Red Sox today. It's a great matchup for him. But like you kind of said, like this is a really top-heavy slate. You have Paul Skeens and Zach Wheeler going today. But if you go down the list, there's a lot of low strikeout guys and or pitchers who are just on a low pitch count today, so they just don't have much upside. But Wheeler checks all the boxes here. He gets most of his strikeouts with his four-seam fastball, and the Red Sox have the highest K rate against four-seamers in the league. So this is a great spot for him. I got burned by the Red Sox the other day when I took Max Fried's under, so not doing that mistake again here. So love Wheeler here, and again, you can count on him to throw 100+ pitches. So that just gives him, a huge ceiling, which is what we're looking for in this market. But Zach Wheeler at 6-1 is a great play here.
Yeah, not taking Paul Skeens. You're going with Zach Wheeler, the other favorite here. It's an interesting look, and I'm curious to see how he'll look off the London series, if there's any jet lag to be had for the Phillies. But if one thing's for certain, it's when you fade the Braves, when you fade the Red Sox, they end up striking out a ton. So hopefully, this one can have a little reverse jinx here with that hat you're wearing. Yep. But the other one that you have in the market, it's a bit of a long shot here. You also like him to go over his strikeout props, and you're targeting that Houston-San Francisco game between Jordan Hicks and Ronel Blanco.
Yeah, so Ronel Blanco's the other value I see in this market. He's 22-1 right now. I'm projecting him closer to 17-1 to have the most strikeouts. So he's, great play there. But I also like his regular prop, 4.5 strikeouts over at minus 160. Similar to Wheeler, we could bank on him to throw 95+ pitches here, which gives him a nice high floor ceiling combo, which is great for the most strikeout prop market and for the traditional strikeout prop market. So this is also a weird situation where the Giants, their lineup isn't official yet, but their expected lineup is pretty top heavy in terms of strikeouts. Like the 6 hitters he's most likely to strike out are the 1 through 6 hitters. So I have him getting pulled right before the 7th hitter the third time through. So, that just kind of magnifies, I guess, the strikeout potential of this Giants lineup, the way it's constructed. When it comes to Blanco, again, he's probably a guy that's going to settle with 5 to 6 strikeouts. So when it comes to like bankroll management, I would probably go with say 0.2 units on the most strikeout prop at 22 to 1, and a full unit to win a unit on his over 4.5. So if he ends up striking out 5 or 6 today, you should be making money on him. So that's just how I would kind of use the money management on this, is a full unit on his over 4.5 and probably 0.2 on his 22 to 1 prop.
You are no stranger to hitting these 20 plus to ones daily strikeout leader. You had Michael King,
Yeah.
I believe it was like a month ago.
Yeah.
The other guy that you hit a long time or about a month ago as well was Paul Skeens. And he pitches tonight against the Cardinals. And I don't want to say it's the ugliest play I think I've ever seen you make in the history of your bets, but it's up there with the ugliest plays, and that's fading Paul Skeens tonight.
Yeah, I don't like to do this. This is the first time I'm attempting this, but I am, I guess, fading him and going with the under 7.5 strikeouts at -130. As you hinted at, I took him to get the most strikeouts when he was like 15 to 1. That was a ridiculous line. But he's been every bit as good as his 36% strikeout rate to start his young career. I have his expected strikeout rate closer to 32%, which is what I'm using as his current, projected strikeout rate, which is really high. If you look at other models, they still have him in the mid 20s. I think that's too low. I think he is arguably the best strikeout pitcher in the league right now. Now, having said that, I still think 7.5 might be a bit too high for him against, the Cardinals lineup that just came out. He has a couple automatic strikeouts, with Nolan Gorman, Matt Carpenter in there. I'm not really banking on them making contact every time they face him here. But there's still, a handful of tougher Ks in this lineup, which could slow him down. But specifically, if you look at the 7 through 9 hitters, that's really his sweet spot where he's going to be racking up strikeouts. I have him getting pulled right around the 6th hitter. So Brendan Donovan will likely be his last hitter the 3rd time through. So he'll only be able to face this bottom third twice, most likely. So I think that makes this Cardinals lineup a little bit tougher to strike out. So I have him actually closer to 6.5 as a coin flip, and think under 7.5 should be closer to -170. And this is somebody that's still very bullish on him. He has the highest expected strikeout rate in my model, and I'm still showing some value on his under here.
This one is not for the faint of heart.
No.
And I mean, Sean, I can't think of something that's more Kerner than taking a guy where it goes MLB games, daily specials, Paul Skeens. He has his own tab, and you're betting his
Yes.
under.
Well, that someone has to, right? Like we're betting on an imaginary line here. I'm assuming over 90% of the cash has come in on his over. I mean, I would love to be showing value on his over. How fun would that be? But, this is just how the market works, where I'm showing value on his under, admittedly saying that I have really high underlying expected K rates for him, and I'm still showing this. That just makes me like it even more. So yeah, again, there's a few hitters in this Cardinals lineup I think will be tougher Ks than he's expected. He's seen to date.
You've backed the Nationals enough times to where Joey Gallo's played hero ball. Maybe Nolan Gorman can do the same tonight. But let's transition to the WNBA now. So get that Braves hat off. We're
Yes.
going to Aces Lynx tonight. There we
Yes.
go. Aces are 6.5-point favorites. Total right around 166 tonight. It's a nice WNBA after dark game. You have 2 props in particular. Why don't you give us your first?
Yeah, so I love this matchup. I got a couple props from him. Both of them are assist props. And the first one is Jackie Young of the Aces, under 6.5 assists at -105. She's seen her assist rate nearly double this season through 8 games that she's played. And a lot of that has to do with Chelsea Gray just has yet to make her season debut. She's still trying to come back from that leg injury. So, Young's still going to have a pretty high assist rate till she returns. However, they recently acquired Tiffany Hayes, who currently has the 2nd highest assist rate on the team after her first 3 games. And she's starting to see more playing time. She had been quasi-retired, so she's still getting her legs back. She's getting more playing time. So I think, with her seeing a rise in playing time, that's going to start to ding Jackie's assist rate a bit. And this is also just a really tough matchup. The Lynx have allowed the lowest assist rate per 100 possessions. They play at the 2nd lowest pace and they've allowed the lowest expected field goal percentage in the league, which is really impressive considering they've faced the second toughest schedule. They're way better than people think, and their defense is way better than the numbers even state. So I think this is a great spot to fade Jackie's assist prop here at 6.5. I'm projecting it closer to about a 61% chance she stays under 6.5.
And the other one you have is on the link side of things. And instead of taking an under here, you're actually targeting it over. So you're rooting for some points for once.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going with Courtney Williams of the Lynx over 4.5 assists at plus 110. You know, Jackie Young, she's facing the Lynx, who have one of the slowest paces in the league, where Courtney Williams is facing the Aces, who play at the fastest pace in the league. So that's one of the reasons why I think, you know, I want to bet on her over here. She's been averaging 5 assists per game this year, but the Lynx have been very careful with their playing time so far. You know, they've been involved in quite a few blowouts, and whenever that happens, they pull her, and she usually, you know, plays around 20 minutes a game. But they do like to save her for spots like this where it's going to be a closer game. So I'm expecting her to play, you know, closer to her max playing time of 28 to 33 minutes here. And, you know, the Aces are very good inside defensively. So I think, you know, Minnesota is going to lean on their 3-point shooting way more here, which is going to help Courtney Williams' potential assist rate as well. So I'm actually projecting her for a full assist more. I had it closer to 5.5. So I'm giving her about a 62% chance of clearing 4.5. And we're getting a nice little plus 110 money line here to boot.
There we go. So Sean Kerner on the over for Courtney Williams, the under for Jackie Young. He's fading Paul Skeens, which I'm still
Pray for me. Pray for me. Pray for me on the Paul Skeens fade pay. Pray for me.
Best of luck, but at least you get viewing from 7 o'clock through the end of the night. It's nonstop action for Sean Kerner. You got daily strikeouts, you got over-unders. So, Sean, thank you for hopping on. Best of luck, and yeah, I'll be praying for you. All right.
I might need it. I might need it, but thanks for having me.
Over to the NBA, and it's been all sunshines and rainbows in Boston through the opening 2 games of the NBA Finals. After being the best team all season and steamrolling through the Eastern Conference, Boston entered minus 225 favorites to take down the Dallas Mavericks in those NBA Finals. And you see the odds as each game has gone by. The Celtics now minus 1,000 heading into Dallas for Game 3 tomorrow night. So with that, we welcome in Jim Turvey to the show to break down more about Game 3. Jim, Boston, obviously heavy favorites. They've taken care of business at home. Is there a time to bet the Dallas Mavericks? And is it Game 3? Because honestly, just from me as an outsider's perspective, watching this series, it just feels like this is, you know, Boston going to roll right through.
Yeah, so before the series, I think most of action was kind of aligned on Boston. And part of that was, you know, that game 1 was such a good spot for Boston. All of the trends, everything was on Boston. And that happened, right? And then we saw game 2 pretty much was right in line with the spread. They won by 7. I think the line may have even closed -7, if not 6.5. So the game 2 looked a little bit more as the market expects. And now the market is going over to Dallas, favored for game 3. And I think, you know, again, to zoom out, it's so easy to get caught up in 2, you know, nice Celtics wins at home, especially that game 1. They really looked good. Dallas is kind of scuffling. It's hard to zoom out for a second and say before this series, you know, things have kind of gone as expected. And I don't think many of us expected this to be a sweep. So I do think there's some room to be on Dallas, but I'm not going to get too crazy with it. I want to do this a little bit game by game. For one, I do think if you think Dallas has a chance from the big picture lens of it, Porzingis really the injury has to be serious, because I don't see many paths to a series victory for Dallas without Porzingis missing time. However, I do think Porzingis is important enough that if he misses time, that this really could be a live series. So I want to be on Dallas. I'm intrigued by Dallas in game 3. There's going to be a look I'm giving here in a minute that aligns with this overall approach to, you know, cautiously optimistic that Dallas can turn things around here in game 3. But if you're looking at like a big picture perspective, a futures thing, let's wait on Porzingis. Let's see. He says he's trying to play for game 3, but he definitely looked a little hobbled. So you could even attack this live, you know, game by game. If he goes out, if he has to go to the locker room, it's a great spot to buy on Dallas, because he really is that big of a swing. And we saw Dallas start to kind of put things together in the fourth quarter of game 2. even the second half of game 2, Luka finally started getting those assists. He had 8 assists in the second half. Daniel Gafford had 11 and 7 in the second half. Matt Issa wrote a great article that kind of broke down what Dallas was finally able to do to kind of draw certain defenders they wanted into pick and rolls and kind of reintegrate those lobs that are so key to their offense. So I think there's some things here that intrigue me by Dallas, but I don't want to, the 4 and 5 wins with Porzingis, unless Porzingis is missing time. That's a really scary thing to have. That's a big mountain to climb. But game 3, I'm definitely intrigued by them, to say the least.
So let's talk about that game 3. Obviously, there's no updated report on Porzingis. He says that he's going to play, and he said he'd die out there on the court, which is, I think, kind of funny because, back in Dallas when Porzingis was there, I think he would have just sat out as soon as he got the injury. But Boston, they are underdogs, as you mentioned, now up to +2 in some areas. They are getting 72% of the bets. So the public obviously seeing this plus number in front of Boston, and they're biting. You like Dallas in this one, but you're targeting a first half angle as opposed to the full game.
Yeah, this is a trend that's been really strong. This is from Brandon Anderson's article up on Action. It was a trend that has held true for a while now. So I'm gonna bear with me as I read off the exact trend numbers here. But teams coming home for a game 3 off a loss of 5 or more are 110, 64, and 6 in the first half. That's 63% overall. And if you go to just the conference finals or later, it goes up to 19 and 6 for a 76% hit rate. So I think there's a lot to like here on Dallas in the first half. Putting together some of those things that we saw in the fourth quarter. Really trying to get those shooters. They have a variety of shooters. That tier of guys who Luka or Kyrie are going to be kicking out to. A lot of those guys have shot better at home all season for them. This is, it's a little bit of a spot play. I'm not always the trends guy, but picking this spot, those shooters should have a little bit more confidence. Just getting some of those 3-point attempts up is going to be key. That's honestly, when I'm hesitant to go on Dallas for a series price, part of it is that they just, even when things are looking decent for them, like towards the second half or fourth quarter of the last game, they're still not getting up a lot of threes. I just want these guys to have the confidence to shoot those threes. Being at home is the exact spot in a game 3 when it's like, we got to do this. Right. That's the exact spot where you're going to start to pull the trigger a little bit more. So I'm all over Dallas in this first half spot. It's at -1.5 right now, which is funny because the full game's only -2. It almost matches the full game spread. But that's because the books know about this a little bit. I'm so confident in the trend overall. I don't think that they're really going to be able to adjust this enough to really cover for what we have seen historically to be very true in this case.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you expect them to shoot better, right? They're shooting so many threes, they're not finding success. But at the same time, so is Boston. And I think a lot of this also, this angle, I love this angle, and I'll probably be playing it as well. I mean, you need Kyrie Irving to show up too, because at the end of the day, you can't have Luka Doncic doing everything. Kyrie Irving has been, an absolute ghost through the first 2 games at Boston, and we'll see whether that happens and role players kind of stepping up. We'll see how Jason Kidd manages that bench. He's got a deep one, and we saw that come out at times in the last series. So we'll see how the adjustments are made in game 3. But let's move over to the WNBA as well. I know you cover that you cover that here at Action Network, and the topic of the week is Caitlin Clark being quote unquote snubbed from Team USA on the Olympic team. It feels like every week there's something that's going on around her. And, obviously she is the spotlight here ever since coming out of Iowa. Do you think that she was snubbed in particular with this Team USA?
I'll lead by saying this. I actually had this second in my notes. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to bring it to the top because I actually think that it should be the central focus of this. I think there was a snub, and I don't think it was Caitlin Clark. I think Arike Ogunbowale really has the case to be like, I got snubbed from this, because at this point in her career, she's much more established than Caitlin. She has a pretty good shout at being the most talented player in the WNBA. Her biggest thing is sometimes her decision-making with, putting up crazy threes or contested layups. Maybe that is the part of her game that she struggles with. Well, listen, you go on an Olympic roster like this, where you have all this talent around you, it's not going to give you the ability to kind of put up those crazy shots. To me, again, I don't always love the direct comparison to men's game, but it does remind me a little bit of Olympic Melo, where Carmelo Anthony, he didn't have the best shot taking decisions, and he would kind of force stuff. Then you get him on the Olympics, he doesn't have to force stuff as much. He's incredible. I think Ogunbowale could very much have been a similar type of player. But to the Caitlin part of it, so I'll say this. I very much understand where people are coming from, saying, you know, Caitlin has been the rising tide that has lifted all the boats, and that, you know, ratings. We need to have her on the team, even if she is not a top 12 American player in the league. But listen, I think there's two important distinctions there. First of all, this is a league that has seen their ratings and attendance has been on the rise for several years. Has it made a big jump this year with Caitlin and as well as the other rookies? Absolutely. However, this is it's the Olympics. It's going to get ratings. These are the best players in the W. They deserve to be there. They are the best players in the league. Caitlin is an awesome player. She's going to be at a lot of these in her career, but if you have watched the league this season, she clearly is not in the tier of many of the players on this roster. The only player that I think you could probably say that she's better than is Diana Taurasi. DT is arguably the GOAT. She's going to go until she doesn't want to go anymore. You're going to have her say actively, I don't want to be there. All the other players here are just better than Caitlin at this point in their careers. And so it's totally fair for me, from my perspective, to say, hey, Caitlin, earn this. I kind of love it as a narrative guy. If she kind of takes this as fuel and like really starts cooking, the more the better. Then we get to talk about this 100 more times, right? So it's kind of a win-win, I think. People are going to be watching the Olympics. The story can even be Caitlin's not there. Let's watch because Caitlin, you know what I mean? This can be flipped a million different ways. I think they'll still get their eyeballs. And I think she can earn her way onto this roster. To me, it's really Arike Ogunbowale who maybe deserves to be in the snub category for this Olympic roster.
Right. She has such a long career ahead of her. And,
sure,
you know, she's doing great in the rookie season, like 16 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. It's not like she's, you know, a below average rookie right now. She's playing great. The Fever, obviously, we've talked long about how they've kind of gotten screwed about their scheduling and how they're playing so many games in such little time with rest. We're going to see Caitlin Clark in the future. She's going to be on that Team USA at some point in her career, probably the next time they do the cuts. But yeah, you can't kick off Taurasi yet. You know, she's a legend in the game. But let's talk tonight's games in particular. Caitlin Clark and the Fever are not playing, but there is a game that you like in particular. Mystics are traveling to the Atlanta Dream. They're about 6.5, 7-point favorites, depending where you look, and over under of 156.5. You like a total in this matchup, and I want to start by saying that, you know, we could be seeing the return of Brittany Sykes, who was a full participant in practice today, and she could return tonight.
Yeah, so this cap actually pivots on that news. So you can go ahead and bet it now, or you can also wait a little bit and make sure that these two injuries are as assumed. So right now, the news out of Washington is that Brittany Sykes was a full participant in practice and Shakira Austin was limited. Now, Brittany Sykes is a player who, Charlie, if you remember, I think it was it opening day. It was certainly early in the season. I came on GDD and we were on the Sykes escalator and we were very excited about it. And we lost it because she went out in like the first quarter. She went out with like after 5 minutes played. She is an outstanding offensive player. Washington's offense has really looked lost without her. They've been the worst offense in the league. Atlanta's defense is strong. So at first you want to think, okay, maybe that makes sense based on this is a very low number, but that makes sense. It's a good dream defense. It's a struggling Washington offense. Sykes is one of those players who kind of moves the line more than the line makers can fully adjust because she's so central to their offense, both in terms of creating her own shot, but also creating shots for others as well. So with her being in, it's a really big boon towards the over. On the flip side of that, Shakira Austin's one of the best defenders in the WNBA. She's one of those great rim protectors that kind of can just hold the defense together entirely on her own. If she's out, that's bad news for the Washington defense. So this is pivoting on 2 players on the injury report today. We saw that one was a full participant in practice and one was not. So I'm using that news to grab the over now. I'll probably put, a half play on it now. And then if we get the official news on those 2 that Sykes is in and Austin is out, that's when I'm going to really love this. I'll add the rest of the bet then. And hopefully we'll be looking good for the over.
Yeah, I remember Brittany Sykes from her days back at Syracuse. She was there when I was still at college there, and she was a hooper. And she nearly had a triple-double in the season opener. And then you mentioned we might have bet her in game 2, and then she went in that first quarter. But this is a great look as well. And if she returns, I'll be joining you as well because rooting on the alma mater, rooting on some points. There's nothing better than that. Jim Turvey, thank you so much for the NBA and the WNBA picks. Have a great day.
Love it. Thanks as always.
Over to the pucks, and here's a look at the Conn Smythe odds after game 2. Florida held serve at home, winning both games And it's no surprise to see Sergei Bobrovsky as the minus 165 favorite. He's allowed just one goal across the opening 2 games. Alexander Barkov is in second, though his status remains up in the air after catching a nasty hit from Leon Draisaitl in game 2. He did not return, and now the Nation Network's Kobe Cohen joins me to talk more about the Stanley Cup final. Kobe, I'm curious, as someone who has an Oilers future and is rooting on the Oilers in this series, should I be pressing the panic button right now? Does Florida basically have this wrapped up? Let me know.
Well, look, I'm not going to say that this is basically wrapped up, because in 2011, I was on a team that came back in the Stanley Cup Finals down 0-2. And we were the underdog going into that series, playing against the Vancouver Canucks, who were, going into the playoffs a better team than us, finished ahead in the standings, had home ice. So look, in hockey, it's really not a major panic button until you lose on home ice. Now, having said that, the temperature should be warm in Edmonton. I mean, that game last night was a 60-minute domination by the Florida Panthers. And in the previous game, Edmonton came out and outplayed Florida for 40 minutes and still couldn't score a goal and still couldn't win a hockey game. So sure, there's reason to be concerned if you have a futures bet on the Edmonton Oilers. But look, when you've got Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, and you've got Leon Draisaitl, they've been ice cold in this first 2 games. I just don't see a world where that's going to continue. These players are too good to not at least become a factor in the series, because right now, neither guy has been a factor in the series.
Right. And as you mentioned, teams leading Stanley Cup 2-0 in the final are 49-5 in the best of 7 series. Obviously, your Bruins beat the Canucks back in 2011, the Penguins in 2009. Those are the only 2 since 1971. So definitely hard to overcome a 2-0 deficit. Now, you mentioned, obviously, the Oilers are returning to their home ice, and you have Connor McDavid. And whenever you have, the best player on the ice, you're always alive. I'm curious also, we talked about the Conn Smythe odds, Bobrovsky minus 165 right now. Is it safe to say that, as long as he doesn't give up like 5 goals a game over the next few, if Florida ends up taking home the Stanley Cup, it's probably his to lose?
Yeah, because you know what? Florida's going to continue to win or lose probably, in a lower scoring fashion. I do think game 3 has the opportunity to be the highest scoring game of the series. But, look, he's let in 1 goal in 2 games. He's outdueled Igor Shesterkin in the last round, who's probably the best goalie there is. Jeremy Swayman the round before, who, people were saying he could win the Conn Smythe with how well he played for the Bruins. And then Andrei Vasilevsky, who was widely regarded as the best goaltender in the NHL for the last number of years. So, I think at times we don't give Sergei Bobrovsky enough credit because his team is so good. Last night, they didn't give up 1 high danger scoring chance, right? 18 or 19 shots, not 1 high danger chance, which is different from game 1 where he stole the entire game. So look, you've got to think he's going to continue to play this way. And I think that the odds makers are on the money here. I think he is absolutely the odds on favorite right now to be the Conn Smythe winner.
Yeah, and in second right now, Barkov, who we don't know the status of. That's still uncertain. And you mentioned game 3, that you think it has the opportunity to be the highest scoring game of the series. And in game 1, Edmonton generated, close to 18 or so high danger chances. And then you mentioned a complete flip of the script in game 2. You actually like game 3 to go over the 5.5 that's currently out there.
I do, because if there's one game in this series that I think we could see a number of goals, I think it would be game 3, because I don't think Edmonton on home ice, I think they're going to come out with their hair on fire in game 3. I mean, their season, is on the line here. If you go out in game 3 and you don't have a good start and that train gets rolling for the Florida Panthers, the lights are going out pretty quickly in Edmonton. And I just don't think a team that has fought as hard as Edmonton, have overcome, slumps and starting up the season bad. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. Draisaitl will be playing game 3. He will not be suspended. Don't believe the hype you're reading on social media about, him potentially getting suspended for that hit on Barkov. We don't know about Barkov. I do think he'll play. I really do. I hope he plays. He's a superstar player, but yeah, look, I think goals are going to come in that game. I think Edmonton's going to get a couple. Florida's always good for a couple. And look, I could see that being a 4-2 type of game, maybe an empty netter. And I do believe Edmonton's got to score, and they've got to score early because it's on home ice. It is one of the best atmospheres in sports, period. A playoff game in the city of Edmonton. The building will be shaking.
Hopefully we'll see a more consistent effort out of Stuart Skinner. Obviously, he's had some shaky moments throughout the entire postseason. And obviously, you mentioned Edmonton's going to come out with their hair on fire. We've seen, trends in the NBA. Teams down 0-2, they come out strong. I like the look here. Don't even mind Edmonton maybe taking home and winning outright that first period. The Oilers are looking to be the first Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup final since 1993. So definitely a lot of pressure on their back. But Colby Cohen, great debut on the Green Dot Daily. I appreciate you stopping by, and enjoy the rest of the series.
All right. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the playoffs. There's nothing like the NHL playoffs.
Over to the links, and the U.S. Open is just a couple days away, and the question surrounding it, Scotty Scheffler or the field. We just saw Scotty win the Memorial, and he enters the U.S. Open at 3-1 to win the major. Those are the shortest odds since Tiger Woods back in 2009 at the PGA Championship. Tiger was plus 175 to win then. You look at next odds, Xander Schauffele at 10-1. He just won the PGA Championship, but has no U.S. Open to his name. Collin Morikawa also looking for that first U.S. Open. He just went toe-to-toe last week with Scotty at the Memorial, falling just one stroke short, as we welcome in Spencer Aguiar to the show to break down more about the U.S. Open. Spencer, we had some ultimate pain last week with Collin Morikawa falling just short of Scotty, but Scotty Scheffler needs to be discussed, and needs to be discussed thoroughly. Since winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational, Scheffler's won 5 of 8 golf tournaments he's played in, including the Masters. 2 of those he's finished second, and he's yet to fall outside of the top 10 in that span. And the odds obviously show it, that he's 3-1 to win the. So I have to ask you, is it crazy to have some Scheffler stock in your portfolio come this weekend?
Here's the thing, Charlie, and this is where the issue comes with Scotty Scheffler in the outright market, in my opinion. Like, I don't even sense my concern stems from the direct overexposure that you get when you make a bet here. You said plus 300. I think you can get it plus 333, plus 335 if you really shop around in the market. But we're talking about a highly volatile outright market that really shouldn't have that sort of vulnerability with our bankrolls, especially when you consider every slight deviation where you are wrong in his projected price will make the outright board even worse. You add all of that to the volatile course that is going to add some luck into the mix. You have these run out potentials where you can go into wiregrass or gorse bushes. You get this extremely baked out market and course that has taken every win from Scotty Scheffler this year and rolled it into what I deem to be one virtually unbettable total. I've said this before on shows, but I tend to think that people are more concerned with saying that they hit the winner than actually making a long-term profit. That doesn't mean Scheffler's not going to win, but more so where I'm going with that answer is that there are real ramifications to your bankroll when you have to get down double or even triple the exposure as you usually would to try to get back a number that is shifted into a territory that I really see as no return here. It's one thing when you give a recommendation and you don't track the outcome because it becomes this out of sight, out of mind situation. It's another when you have real money and real tracking of the bet if it doesn't hit. I do think as an industry, we often get caught up in that narrative of, you always see it throughout the space, Charlie. It's like, did you hit the winner this week? And that is what ends up making the headlines. But it's important to remember that that is just one small part of a much larger betting landscape. There are countless other options to consider, much more comprehensive approaches that can lead to better sustainable betting outcomes. It's funny because if you want to look at what's probably my most noteworthy win in the space, it would be Wyndham Clark at the US Open last year at 100-1. It's a great win. I don't want to discredit that victory, but why does that make the headlines over? If you want to take, I've had 1,200 bets in this space from head-to-head wagers. It's gone over 60% through that, but that's not what anybody wants to talk about. We want to talk about the big tickets that get across the finish line. So I think the problem is just the ramifications that come into play when you punch a 3-1 ticket. I'm somebody who bets to win between 7 or 8 units on all my outrights. I don't want to get down between 2 to, over 3 units of a bet there.
Yeah.
I have a really aggressive card this week, and I'm still only at a unit of exposure. So it's just too much exposure at the end of the day.
Yeah, you mentioned you hit the U.S. Open champ last year. We're going to get a long shot pick from you in just a little bit. And you mentioned Scotty Scheffler, the exposure, just in general, too. I mean, everyone in the public's all over Scotty Scheffler. You look at BetMGM, highest ticket percentage. Scotty Scheffler, nearly a quarter of all tickets at BetMGM have been placed on Scheffler to win. The handle, nearly 46%. So no surprise that everyone's hitting Scheffler. He's been on fire. The odds are moving down. But you mentioned the volatility of this course. Pinehurst number 2 is, it's the first time we've seen this course since the U.S. Open back in 2014. Martin Keimer went -9. He shot -9. It was a runaway victory for him at the U.S. Open. But then you look at the other numbers. Ricky Fowler, -1. Eric Compton, -1. Those were the only 3 golfers at Pinehurst number 2 that finished under par. Can you just talk a little bit more about this, course as a whole? I know Shane Lowry just went on yesterday saying, I forgot how effing hard this place is. So I'm sure, there's going to be a lot of mishaps.
Yeah, Pinehurst is a Donald Ross venue. Ross is always known for these diabolically unique around the green complexes that veer away from your standard expectations of what you see on the PGA Tour Weekly. That's going to be no different here. You have these tortoiseshell greens that tend to repel shots entirely off the surface. That can sometimes be up to 30 yards away from the hole. You can land into traps or these tight lies that add the headache to the construction. All of that would be challenging on its own to try and traverse because of the complexity of the track. But then we also get an excessive number of approach shots from 175 plus yards that are going to be hit into these fiery fast greens that have not received a ton of rain in the area recently. Golfers are already talking about how balls aren't holding the surface on their second shots. Players have been talking about how they're being forced to putt and chip with 3-woods, other things like that from off the surface once they miss the green. There are also going to be some unpredictable runouts with a driver in hand. I talked about that a little bit a second ago with Scheffler. I think fast and firm conditions always naturally move shots, depending on what a course has around it, into areas of issues. And that's going to be the sandy areas here. It's the wiregrass, it's the gorse bushes. A lot of times that generates very unfair outcomes. And that volatility of the venue does add some boom or bust potential across the board here, because you're going to be put in this situation where nothing is a foregone conclusion until a final ball is struck. The US Open often gets a bad rap because of that. Like, they've lost control of some of these courses in the past when you look at these green complexes turning towards that sinister nature and nothing being able to stop. And we're hearing those discussions now of players having those viewpoints of it's already borderline. Like Wyndham Clark came out and said it's borderline greens to begin with now. And I think that adds some concerns to a lot of people out there. But I have to be honest with you, Charlie, like, whether it's fair or not fair, I love carnage in a golf tournament, and I love seeing players get tested. And the closer to even par that we are, it's usually the more that I like the event. So while it may add a little bit of volatility to the mix here when it comes to the actual betting, and, we can talk about how the venue hasn't seen competitive action since the 2014 US Open. If you want to try to find statistical perspectives here, that already adds its back end problem to the narrative here. But from what the course actually is and the challenge that I think it's going to possess, it's going to be baked out and it's going to be fiery fast.
I mean, listen, I love this because, as you mentioned, volatility leads to the opportunity for value to be had on long shots. Long shots are my bread and butter. I love taking those. I don't like taking, the favorite Scotty Scheffler at minus money to finish top 5 or 3-1 to win the US Open. So let's talk some long shots here. You have a long shot that you have circled. You look back at the past US Opens. You mentioned Wyndham Clark 100-1. You won last year. You took him to win. Even Matt Fitzpatrick the year before at the US Open was 30-1. We saw Keimer have 2014 at the US Open. He was 40-1 when he ran away with it. Who is your favorite long shot for this venue that's still, at least your long shot pick, that still has value right now?
One of the things you're always looking for in a long shot wager is someone who can overachieve their baseline projection when given that very specific venue that is being used. We got that last year with Wyndham Clark. He landed inside the top 10 of my model for weighted strokes gained total, expected scoring on firm conditions, and projected scoring on fast courses. You're always going to have that boom or bust nature with these bets because there is a reason that these options have drifted up the board and into the ranges that they are right now. However, with all of that being said, I did see a lot of similarities in Min-Woo Lee this week, including how he fit Pinehurst way above his baseline expectation versus any other course that you could throw him on weekly. Lee generated a few extremely robust returns for me, grading 5th in this field when combining long iron proximity plus around the green production, 3rd for expected total driving. I think that's a very important stat this week, and 5th for weighted strokes gained total. That last metric of the strokes gained total is really intriguing because that's where it starts to mimic this Wyndham Clark production. Clark was 7th for me at LACC, where he graded, he was inside the top 10 in most areas, but 7th for weighted strokes gained total is a really strong output for a 100-to-1 golfer. That put him 20. If you want to look at Min-Woo's profile, he is outside of the top 70 in every approach metric that is within 175 yards. But all of a sudden, if you look from outside 175, he becomes a top 10 golfer in those proximity ranges. So the around the green game, some of the putting stuff on Bermuda will have to see a bit of an increase of what we've gotten recently. But at his very best, he does have that scrambling nature that we've seen at tournaments like the Players Championship, where he worked himself up the leaderboard. So there's a lot of different ways to consider Min-Woo. 80-to-1 price to win this tournament is one of those routes. I certainly think you can consider him inside of the placement market. There are head-to-head wagers that make sense that I like this week with him. So it's going to be a very aggressive approach that I'm taking with Min-Woo, because that's always the thing with my model, Charlie, is if I have an edge, I'm trying to attack it over and over again. So Min-Woo is going to be that player for me at this US Open.
This, I'm going to look down, look back up, and I'm going to have top 20s, top 30s, and outright on Min-Woo Lee. This is music to my ears, Spencer. The last two major championships Min-Woo played in, Masters, PGA, also finished top 30. So he's no stranger to at least going through some tougher courses. Obviously, this is a different venue and a different course and a much more volatile one, but has shown up in some of the bigger events, at least finishing inside that top 30. Spencer Aguiar, you can find him on Twitter at TOffSports for all the rest of his coverage for the US Open. Spencer, thank you so much and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a pleasure as always.
And just a reminder that any picks we give out here on the show, like the one you just heard about Min-Woo Lee from Spencer, you can get by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app at Green Dot Daily. We keep track so you don't have to. And that's going to be all for Green Dot Daily on this fine Tuesday. I'll be back here tomorrow in the host seat at 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the Action app and YouTube channel. You have a great rest of your day.